Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. Today I want to talk about blossom end rot. What it is, how do you treat it, how do you look for it, how do you identify it. We'll cover all the bases on BER, blossom end rot. Now, what it's not a fungal disease, it's not a virus, it's a physiological disorder with the plant. And right now I'm showing you all of my container plants. And typically it's your container plants that show blossom end rot. Your ground plants can get it, but they usually take care of themselves for several reasons we'll get to. So your plants can get blossom end rot, your tomato plants, other plants can get it too, but we're talking about tomato plants today, because there is either not enough calcium in the soil, in the container mix, and when your plant can't get enough calcium, your tomatoes form blossom end rot. Now, it could also be that you have calcium in your soil, but you're not watering evenly, and the root system dried out one time. It only takes one time, and when that root system dries out in the container, it can't access or pull in the calcium, so your tomato plants get blossom end rot. Now, you could be watering fine, you could have calcium in there, and maybe you have a magnesium issue where you don't have enough or you have too much, and it doesn't allow calcium to flow into the root system, into the plant. That's very rare, that doesn't happen often, so we're not going to really cover that. We're going to talk about making sure your plants have calcium and making sure you're watering evenly. Now, I've been going through these plants today trying to find an example of blossom end rot. I've been away for 7 days, so these are really beat up. They're all going to get fixed up. As the plant started having its root issue, blossom end rot set in. And when the bottoms of your fruits look like this, that's called blossom end rot, and I'll explain what that is and how you treat it. So as this when I'm away on vacation, I come back, I look for problems and disease. And for instance, that looks like a fungal disease, all those spots on the leaf, so that will be treated. Now, in addition to calcium issues and watering issues, the tomato variety can be more susceptible to blossom end rot. This is a Roma type, and Roma tomatoes typically get them. However, I don't have any on these Roma tomatoes, and that's because I set the soil up, I'll show you how to do that, with calcium. Either you can use lime or gypsum. And I also sell calcium nitrate at my seed shop. It's not organic, but it's just calcium and nitrogen in a water-soluble form. It's not going to hurt you or your plants or the soil. And you pour that onto the leaves once or twice a month, a little bit into the soil, and that puts free calcium into there. So that's how you ensure that your plants have the calcium. You're not overdoing it. So I did pick one tomato, and blossom end rot is always on the blossom end, the bottom of the tomato plant. It looks something like this. It's usually round. This is, I think, a different issue going on with this tomato. But this is a good example. If you see the mark on the bottom of the tomato, round circle, browning out, typically it looks great up top, and then when you turn it over, the whole bottom. And this usually occurs when the tomato is still green. So you see it on the bottom of your green tomatoes, and it's a sign of panic. You worry, like, what is going on? Here are the Romas, and it would be right here where the circle would start, the brown circle. And these look really, really healthy. I've looked at all of them. And again, the success, I think, is because I've been vigilant with even watering. I don't let the soil dry out. And I prepared this and give them enough calcium. And those are things that you can do to stop it. The other thing you can do is don't plant that Roma variety that tends to get the blossom end rot. All right, so how do you set up your container mix to really prevent BER? Let me go get some of my gypsum, and I'll show you how you set up your soil. So you're going to set up calcium before you put the plants in, and then you're going to provide calcium throughout the season, and we'll go over that. Okay, so blossom end rot is different than a fungus and a virus. Just keep that in mind. So we can do a lot of things to make sure it doesn't happen. Blossom end rot, BER, is more prevalent in containers because they dry out and they often don't have enough nutrients in there. So I'm going to show you how to set the containers up. So if I had to pick the main reason why tomatoes get BER, it's because the container soil is too small and it's not holding enough moisture. So you can really fix the problem by using a larger container. These are 5-gallon containers. You can grow peppers in here. You can grow a determinate tomato. But these are on the smaller end, so a bigger container makes a difference. We're going to go over the bone meal and the lime in a second. you want to add a lot of peat moss to your container mix. You can use cocoa coir. This is going to help hold water. Use a higher quality potting mix if you're buying it. And you just want to make sure you're almost, if you're making yourself 50% peat, 50% coir, it just gives the mix that extra material in there to hold water. A good potting mix is about 50% peat moss too. So once you have the containers set up with the right soil, holds water, you can go with your basic lime. This is a 5-gallon container. This is how I generally do it. 2 or 3 tablespoons of lime. You fill the containers about halfway. Even 1-2 tablespoons. You don't need a lot. Calcium is a lower nutrient. It's a nutrient your plants demand at a lower level. They must have calcium, but not like at the levels of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So you don't need a lot. So 2 tablespoons, mix it in well. Just get the lime through the container. You do this obviously before planting, and this gives you confidence that you've got lime in there, you've got calcium in there. You could use gypsum, bone meal, high in calcium and phosphorus. 1 or 2 tablespoons, mix it in. This is really plenty of calcium, probably for the season, but we'll go over a couple other tips too. So that's all mixed in, and then basically I set my container up. So you know that your container is set up with the calcium. You know, you drop in your transplant, and then when your tomato plant gets to, you know, maybe 2 feet, 3 feet tall, it's flowering, it has a little bit of small tomatoes on there. The tomatoes are starting to form is what I'm trying to say. You could take a little bit of lime and sprinkle it around the plant. You could take a little bit of bone meal. You could use both, you could use one or the other. That just gives you confidence as you got some lime up there, which has calcium. You have bone meal up there that has calcium, and every time you water it in, more calcium is going to get in there. That's plenty. Now, there's a lot of worry. People say, well, you can't put in too much calcium, or you can't put in too much lime. It's going to change the pH. It's going to do all this. That can be true on a large scale. When you're putting material, fertilizers into a container, rain, watering, it's always going through here, flushing out a lot of the nutrients, and the plant is taking a lot of the nutrients. So it's really hard to overdo it. That being said, if you put in too much magnesium, and that will come from Epsom salt, you know, I recommend you can use that like once a month, just a quick sprinkle over the leaves of the plant, a little bit in the soil. But if you're using Epsom salt as a major fertilizer every week, you could load this up with too much magnesium, and it's going to cause a problem with your plant being able to get calcium. So just, you don't overdo it. All right, so that covers how you would use lime or gypsum. And again, lime changes pH, gypsum does not. This will lower the acidity or raise the pH level. And then bone meal will provide phosphorus, and it would also provide calcium because it's made from bone. All right, let's go back to the garden. Let me fix up those determinate tomatoes, and I'll talk a little bit about how you use calcium nitrate. So it's really important to understand that blossom end rot can be prevented, and that this is what this video is really about. Set up your container soil like I showed you, and make sure, if you can't water regularly, make sure you get a larger container, because that will hold water longer and it's more forgiving. If the plant again dries out one time, if the root system dries out one time, there's a great chance that you're going to get blossom end rot. These are 10-gallon root pouches I sell at my seed shop. They're perfect for these determinate tomatoes in here. And again, you know, as we walk through, I couldn't find any blossom end rot. That's because I set my soil up like I showed you. So try that next year. That will help out a whole lot. Now, suppose, of course, you're in the middle of the season, you have blossom end rot. What do you do? So those tomatoes aren't going to recover. They're always going to have it. You can let them ripen and cut it off if you want, but you want to get calcium in. The easiest way to do it, if you buy that bottled blossom end rot spray, that's just calcium nitrate, and that costs you a lot of money. You can get calcium nitrate at my seed shop. 2 tablespoons into a gallon of water. You have water-soluble calcium in there. That's what you want. That calcium will be able to be pulled in directly by sometimes the leaves and the root systems right away. And this is all you do. A good soaking with the calcium nitrate, and then you get in water in the root system. You know, maybe 5 seconds. You don't have to overdo it because you don't need a lot of the calcium. So now we know we've added calcium to our tomato plants that had blossom end rot. You can do this once a week, not once a week, once a month really, maybe twice a month. You just don't need to overdo it, is my point. You're putting in the calcium is there. If you can't get calcium nitrate, or this is sometimes out in your garden, if your main garden or your plants that are planted in the ground are getting blossom end rot, that's probably because it really is missing calcium. So you can add in lime right away as a top dressing. You can just sprinkle it down, water it in, or you can make a slurry, which I have a video on, and I just wanted to simplify it. Just 2 handfuls of lime into a gallon of water. For a container plant, people keep saying, how often do I do this? You just have to do it once. Let the water dissolve the lime. Now, lime often has calcium in a form that has to be broken down by soil life, but there's some freestanding calcium in there that will get to the plant. So you're just diluting 2 handfuls, maybe a cup, into a gallon of water, and you would just pour it in like that. 1 dosing is fine for that month. You could do it again the next month if you want, but the calcium is there. So, and then if you were going to do, you know, your tomato plants in the earth, just pour this gallon around the root system. You have lime. The main issue, we covered calcium, the main issue really is watering. If your watering's uneven, the roots dry out, they can't access the calcium, you get blossom end rot. You're going to see it more in your container plants. You're going to see it more often in container plants and Roma tomatoes. If Roma tomatoes are a problem, switch it up. But this is how you identify blossom end rot. This is how, most importantly, you prevent blossom end rot. And this is how you correct the problem if you have it in your garden. Hope this makes sense. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com. And I also have a new book coming out called The Modern Homestead Garden. You can find the link in the video description if you'd like to pick up and pre-order that. Thanks so much for watching.